Wanyanyekovu got so excited that he stood up and shouted, "Preach!" As she continued. They insisted on defining their status. They were hostages in their own land. So were we. It is not intelligent to ask your captor to dictate the terms of your acquired freedom. And it is not freedom if you have no choice. Many began to jump for joy as she spoke. Music rang out in the building, but there was no band in the building. The mother stood up and started praising the Lord as well. She let out a large cry, saying, "Glory!" and the entire building shook from its foundation. Wanyanyekovu felt joy and peace and had to stand up. He closed his eyes and started praising Sabaoth. When he opened his eyes, he stood in an empty, abandoned building, but the feeling was still there. Wanyanyekovu said as he shook his head, "Just like fire, just like fire." Walking away from the building, he said, "Who was she?" and heard a voice, "I'm Prophetess Akilamelech." Looking around, he just smiled. "Thanks, Akilamelech, I had a great time, and I needed that." 50 feet from the building, she stood there with her mother on Highway 65 with a beautiful and peaceful smile. "You're welcome, and this is my mother, Pastor Jones." Pastor Jones smiled. "Gradualism is how the evil one will try to destroy Sabaoth's people." She pointed toward Highway 65, and they all walked down the road as Pastor Jones continued. "By slowly indoctrinating a plan into action until it becomes normal, bestiality, necrophilia, and even homosexuality. During the early 1970s, homosexuality was a mental disease. Now, it is a way of life. It gradually became accepted by the 1990s. By 2000, it was a way of life. Thousands of years later, this world is just as, or even worse than Sodom and Gomorrah." Akilamelech turned toward Wanyanyekovu. "Remember this: man is the sixth extinction facing this planet. His greed and disrespect for nature and life is hurtling him towards the extinction of over 1 million species in the next decade or less." Nshika said, "Except those days be shortened, no flesh will be saved." And so it is. They continued talking until they were between Fleury Road and Omega Road on Highway 65. Akilamelech stopped and took out some olive oil. She and her mother prayed over the oil, and her mother poured it into her hands. Akilamelech said, "You are about to meet incubus and succubus. You will need strength to defeat your enemy. You must know your enemy to defeat your enemy. Only through Sabaoth is this possible." She placed her hand on his head and prayed for him. He lifted his hands in the air and started praising Sabaoth. When he came down, they had disappeared. Wanyanyekovu felt like he was on cloud 9 as he continued to walk toward Tallulah. He passed the old abandoned town of Talabena and closed in on the bend before he finally got to Tallulah. Wanyanyekovu felt at peace since his talk with Akilamelech and her mother, all the while enjoying the scenery when he came across a sign that read, "Welcome to Tallulah."